Okay, so after doing the last line review of the M48 patent, we were asked to do Russian medium, so here's your request being answered. Although for the sake of expediency and also to string out this content a little bit further, we're only going to be covering the 10s today and we will ramble through the rest of the family tree another day. Starting off, we've got the T62. Overall, good mobility, decent enough hull armor, I suppose. Not anything, well, there's only one Russian tier 10 medium that you really want for hull armor, and that's the 430U. We will get to that in a moment. The biggest thing about the T62 is it has no turret weak points whatsoever. Um, yeah, again, good mobility, good view range, good turret armor. Hull is Also, you're going to find the T62A, the 140, and the 430 all have the same basic gun with the 430 firing slightly faster and the 140 with more gun depression. Okay, moving on to the Object 140. It's a very similar tank to the T62A, but as previously mentioned, it has 6 degrees of gun depression versus 5. But that's also to help make up for the fact that the turret roof is weaker with a 45mm upper plate, so that it can be overmatched by Tier 10 tank destroyers in particular. It is a vulnerability and a weakness. It's the primary difference between the 62 and the 140. They both share roughly the same mobility. And onto the 430. Now, this is a little bit of an oddball. This is a medium that actually depends slightly on the hull armor. Again, has a slightly weaker turret roof than compared to the 62A, but stronger than the 140. The biggest thing about the 430 is that it has incredibly high DPM. I believe it is in the top 2 or 3 tanks for DPM at Tier 10. Mediums, at least. Okay, next we have the K91. Now this thing's an oddball of a tank. Rear turreted, really good accuracy and gun performance, decent enough mobility. Again, your standard Russian 100mm gun, so nothing too crazy there. But this is the oddball of the Russian medium tank line. It has high accuracy with overall good pen and good rate of fire. This thing is honestly closer to a tank destroyer. It can side scrape to a point, but well, no, actually, with 60mm of hull armor, this thing can reliably side scrape against most things except for maybe like a Jaeger or a Death Star, as long as you angle correctly. The front hull, not super strong, not terrible. The turret is, again, okay, but nothing special. This is a long-range tank destroyer of a medium tank. That's where it's at its happiest. But I want to say, what do we have for gun depression here? Maximum depression 9 degrees. Now, I think there's a caveat to that it is over the side and not over the front. I believe the front is limited to 3 to 4, I believe. And now we finally have the oddball of the Russian medium line question mark. The Object 430U. This is a tank that recently did have a slight mobility nerf to it here in the last couple of patches. Nothing crazy, but it still performs well with okay mobility. It is the slowest of the Russian Tier 10 mediums. However, it makes up for it with a 122mm gun that has 440 alpha damage with reasonable pen, good enough accuracy, and good enough soft stats to where it just kind of bullshits its way through. They call it a medium tank, but it's really more of a heavy tank, or the more honest way to put it would be main battle tank. It's closer to a modern standard of tank and performance so far as gun goes, as well as mobility. You all know what this thing is. It's kicked your ass enough if you're high enough in the tiers. It's honestly, if it compares favorably to the IS-7 just being slightly faster. Definitely the heavy medium of the Russian line. And the last one we have is going to be the Object 907. Now this thing is a very interesting hybrid of the original first 3, the 62A, the 140, the 430, and it draws also a little bit from other areas in the Russian line, in particular the Object 257 Tier 9 Heavy. It has okay turret armor with a slightly weaker roof, a very good rate of fire on a 100mm gun with the standard APCR and heat ammunition, your bread and butter ammo that you're very familiar with at this point. And going from there, this is the interesting thing though. It has the rounded front hull, somewhat like the 279E, but not in the same kind of effect. It is thinner, after all, this is a medium tank. So it can actually bounce shots if you're playing with your enemies fairly well. But the biggest thing is the V-shaped hull that allows you to basically sit broadside onto your enemies, especially if they're using 120 millimeter and smaller guns, to where you can almost reliably sit broadside on as long as they don't hit the upper half of the hull. It more than likely will bounce. You actually want to give the enemy the side of your tank to shoot. It'll be at about like a 35 to 45 degree angle, and they're going to reliably bounce off the side of that tank, unless it's a bigger gun, of course, in which case, well, you're screwed. It's a medium. What are you going to do? It's a real oddball, but also we cannot forget that it has a 750,000 free XP price tag, so that does kind of prohibit it from everybody per se. Whereas anybody can get it. My God, that's a lot of battles you got to play to get that free XP for free. Okay, so that about finishes up this recording. Overall, they're all decent machines, with the T62, the 140, the 430, the 907 all performing similarly, with the two outliers being the K91 and the Object 430U. If you're new and you're starting out, go for the 430U. It's a very forgiving, very easy to play tank that does forgive mistakes because of its armor and also its alpha damage. The T62 after that is probably your next best choice because it's a good overall and it's going to give you a good idea of how the entire line plays in general. And the only other one is the K91. They recently were screwing around with the Death Star again, but god damn it, Jeff, you've been watching the K91 for how long now, and you still haven't made any tweaks? Why will you not give the poor thing some love? Please leave the comments, leave any comments you want for any other lines you want to follow, and in the future, at some point here, we will do a wrap-up of the other parts of the Russian medium line. We'll cover all the lower-hanging fruit, possibly from Tier 1 to Tier 9. We'll have to see where it goes and how badly he wants to string this out. Okay.